Curry, a dish that comes in different levels of spiciness, and different places around the world have their own ways of making this dish. I used to really love curry, but now maybe I'd have them once in a while. I'm not sure it's just me getting older, or maybe sometimes your personality change gets reflected on your food choices. I don't know, but anyway, let's mix some curry together in blender today. Alright, so now I am in Blender 4.5 and I'm pretty sure they constantly are pumping out new versions of Blender, but really I have not been able to catch up with all the new functions from maybe 4.x and all that, so I'm still using 4.5 right here, but if you're using newer versions, definitely works. Okay, so make sure you're using Eevee and go down to color management and that we are using standard. So the colors from the render will be exactly as the same as the colors we choose in the shader editor. And make sure to also go to edit and preferences. And under add-ons, make sure the node wrangler add-on is turned on. This is what we do every single tutorial basically. So the first thing I want to do over here is to create a circle so we can create our plate first. So let me create a circle and we have some settings down here. If you don't have it, just open it up. Is at the bottom left corner and you can see we can adjust the vertices, number of vertices. I think by default is 32, but we just need a lower number for now. We can add subdivisions later, so let's do 16. And then we can just quickly model our plate and whatever shape that you want. You can make a round plate or a little bit of an oval shape. It's also okay. Let me see. Let me just scale down on the y-axis and just some simple modeling. It doesn't have to be too complicated. Something just like this, I can just merge all of them at the center and I can shade smooth and I can add a subdivision surface modifier. And maybe before that, I can also add a solidify first. So let me just give it a little bit of thickness just like that. Just a simple plate is fine. Any form of plate that you can make. And it's pretty easy, right? And now let's move on to making the rice. And if you guys have ever watched my old rice tutorial, this is exactly what I'm gonna do next. It's just the same thing. If you guys have ever watched that tutorial, I think it's pretty helpful and it still works right now. Of course, I'm still exploring ways to make rice in a more efficient way, but I'm still gonna be using like particle system and all that. I think it still looks the best for now. So let me go ahead and let me just rename this plate first up here. And let me just add a icosphere in object mode. And maybe I can just, let me just go ahead into edit mode. Go to front view. I don't have numpad with me, so I have to use other keys, but it should be 1 on the numpad. If I remember correctly. I haven't been using Blender for a while, but let me just go ahead and delete the bottom half of our icosphere. So delete those faces. So right now we have like a hemisphere. Is that the word? This is the base of our rice. So basically, let me just, perhaps we can add a subdivision over here. Just 1. And then maybe for the plate is also just 1, right? Okay. So now let me just scale down this hemisphere. This rice object over here is the base of the rice. So what I can do is to maybe just bring it to the side over here and just right at the edge of our plate, just like that. And now we can just use edit mode or even sculpt mode to kind of shape it into the rice, the base shape of the rice, on the plate. So let me just use sculpt mode and I'm using the grab brush. You can press G for the grab brush, I believe. Is it G, right? It's probably G, okay. If it's not, you can just select here the grab brush. And let me just bring down the rice for a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit higher on the edge. So let me just push this over for a little bit. I can even smooth it by holding shift and just shift click just like that. You know, maybe not so much just like that. I can just spread rice like this, however you want it to look like. Basically, it doesn't have any restriction over here. I just want it to look like this. And this is, let's say this is the shape of the rice that I want. So I'm gonna rename this object as well, call it rice base. So now let me move on to creating our rice particle. So what I'm gonna do is to go back to object mode and Shift A, mesh cylinder. And right here, down here for the settings, I'm going to choose a relatively low vertex count. I'm gonna be using 8 vertices over here. And for the cap fill type, I'm gonna use triangle fan. By default, it is an n-gon. It looks like this. It's just one n-gon at the top. And we don't want that. We want triangle fan with like they are merging at the center vertex, just like that. So let me go ahead and scale this cylinder down so it's just around the size of the rice. It doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be exact right now. So let me focus on this cylinder over here, and let me Control A and apply the scale first. And then I'm gonna go into edit mode and SZ and just scale it up for a little bit just to make it a little bit longer, just like rice. And then we can go ahead and go to edge selection mode up here and select this edge. Just alt click on the edge and select this edge and Control B. Just give it a tiny bevel just like that. Maybe I can add like one more loop by using my mouse scroll wheel. Maybe it's fine. If it's too much, we can always, you know, modify our rice particle later. And let me just add a loop cut in the middle as well. Let's see if it's gonna be too heavy on our scene later, but let me just go ahead and select these 2 vertices at the top and the bottom, and let me go to proportional editing, or you can hit O and SZ and just modify the fall off with your mouse scroll wheel just like that. And let me just select the center loop and make it a little bit more fatter just like that. It depends on the rice you want to use. Some rice are long and thin, some are just like little fat balls just like this. And we can shade it smooth, and this will be our rice particle. So let me just rename this and call this rice particle for now. And let me go back here and go ahead and select our rice base, this object we have over here. And then I'm going to go to particles and add a particle system and select hair. And then I'm going to check advanced. And then I'm going to go to render, and under render as, I'm going to select object. And then the object will be the rice particle. And then for rotation over here, we're gonna check this, and then I'm gonna randomize it just like that. And the orientation, I'm gonna select normal. And they look a little bit small right now. So right here, down here in render, we can just increase the scale until it kind of looks like rice. And now we can increase the number for the particle system. Like we can leave some gaps here and there. It doesn't have to be like all like completely dense. We can have a little bit of gap, and I think it's okay. And let me just scale this down for a little bit. Maybe they're a little bit too rounded, so let me go ahead and just delete these 2 edge loops over here for the rice particle. So I have less vertices, and also it looks a little bit more pointy. Right here it looks like this. Let me adjust the size for a little bit, maybe a little bit bigger, just like this. And this is how it looks like right now. And if you want, you can randomize the scale, but usually they don't like vary too much in scale, so just don't like do this. It doesn't look like rice, right? You can do a little bit, or you don't need to use any randomization at all. So this is the rice particles that we have over here. Okay, let me maybe adjust the scale just a little bit more. Is this like too big or too small? I think this is okay. Like we can adjust things later in edit mode and stuff. So let's say this is our final rice particles, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and select this particle system, the rice base, And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and hit make instances real over here in the modifier settings. So after I hit it, all rise particles in the particle system will be like actual objects right now, but they're all separated. So while they are all selected, like don't click anywhere just yet, I'm gonna hit M and move to a new collection, and I'm gonna call it rise particles, something like that, with an S. And right now I'm going to go ahead and delete the original rise particle, because if I don't do this, there will be issues when I merge all of these particles into a single object. So let me delete it first, just like that. You can see some overlapping over here between the particles, and technically it doesn't do too much to our final effect, so we can just leave them as is, or you can decrease the count for the particles if you think this doesn't look so good. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead to the rise particle collection. I'm going to right click and select objects. So now they're all selected, and I'm going to select just like one of them over here. Shift select just one of them, and they are going to look like this, a little bit lighter orange, and the rest is dark. The rest are dark orange. And what I'm going to do is to hit Control J and merge them all into a single object, just like this. And now they are just one object. So I'm gonna just rename it to rise particle all, maybe. So this is our rise particle. And now what we want to do is to go ahead and add a modifier. So let me add a modifier called edit and data transfer. And for the source, I'm gonna select the rise base, and I'm gonna go down here for phase corner data. I'm gonna check it, and then right here for custom normals, I'm gonna hit that too. And now what's happening here is actually I'm using the rise base over here. Actually, I can go ahead and delete the particle system on the rise base right now. So actually I'm taking the normal of the rise base and putting it onto this rise particle object. So they are sharing the same normal because they share the same shape, and it is a good idea to copy the shading of the rise base onto the particles. So now they have this kind of smooth shading look, but it doesn't look like much right now because we are in object mode. So what we can do is to actually start assigning some materials to this. So now let's go to the shading workspace, and let me go ahead and go to the rendered view. And right now we can't really see anything because there isn't any light. So let me just add a sunlight for now. So let me just add a sunlight, angle it for a little bit, just like that. So this is how it looks. And now let me add a material onto our plate first. And let me just add one material, and I'm gonna perhaps just call this material plate. And then let me see, I want to make this kind of metallic. You know, in some shops they just have like metallic plates just like that, so it's interesting. We can make it a slightly metallic plate. And what I can even do is to actually add a HDRI texture for the background. So let me just go ahead to the world settings, and I'm going to hit the background node and Control T, and let me just load in an environment texture over here. So now I've loaded in an HDR texture that I got from Polyhaven, and what I can do over here is to just go to render and go to film, and I'm just gonna hit transparent for now. So now you can see some nice reflections on our plate. Maybe I want to actually modify the plate for a little bit. So let me just go into edit mode. Let me just go over here, hit this icon so I can see the mesh in edit mode, and I'm gonna select this this edge over here and just go ahead and just make it a crease so it looks a little bit more sharp in that area. So let me just make these as a crease, just like that. Maybe the edge as well. Now it looks a little bit more harsh on those edges. Maybe make it a little bit less thick, just like that. And then maybe I can bring the rise particles And the rice base down for a little bit, just like this. Just so they're kind of intersecting with the plate. And we can deal with these extra particles like right now. Let me just go into edit mode and hit tab and get into edit mode for the rice particle. And let me just hit L. Like everywhere you see a rice particle poking out, I'm just gonna hit L and just right on top of those particles. I'm just gonna hit L and I can select the entire particle this way. So I'm just gonna keep spamming L and just kind of select all of these rice particles that are poking out. And there are definitely better ways, like you can use like the sculpt mode to just push them in or something. But I've tried that, it looks a little bit weird, so I'm just gonna do the more traditional way of just directly deleting all of these rice particles. And then once pretty much all of these rice particles that are poking out are all selected, I can just go ahead and hit X and just delete all these faces. Maybe there's a little bit left, let me delete them as well, like this. So now it looks like this at the top, and yeah, everything looks pretty nice right now. I can start adding some materials onto the rice particle as well, so let me go ahead and add a material and call it rice. And I'm gonna use the same material for the rice base, so let me just assign that. And right now, pretty much the same thing for the rice. I'm going to make a simple cell shading converter shaded to RGB, converter color ramp, set it to constant, and just like move it over for a little bit. And perhaps just change this to a light gray. And if you want to, you can make it a little bit yellowish or something. But I think this color, very pale yellow, is perhaps fine for now. We can adjust the color ramp for a little bit just to fit our scene. And make sure you increase the roughness for the principal BSDF, because if you do this, there will be some like reflection stuff going on. So let me just increase the roughness for the principled all the way, so the shading stays consistent in different angles. And let me just go ahead and start adding our curry. Oh. And in case you see some like edges poking out for the rice base as well, what I'm gonna do is to just select both the rice base and a rice particle. I'm gonna go into edit mode by hitting tab. I'm gonna select these edges and just kind of push them back with proportional editing and just do this. Just push them in just like that, so they don't poke out of the plate, just like that. Yeah. So now we can move on to creating our curry. So what I can do is to select the rice base and the rice particle, just hide them for now. Go ahead into edit mode of the plate, and I'm gonna alt click on this edge over here that is our bottom edge of the plate, and I'm gonna hit Shift D and duplicate it, right click to confirm without moving it, and P separate selection. So now we have a little loop over here. So what I'm gonna do is to remove the solidify and all that. We can keep the subdivision. What I'm gonna do is to go into edit mode of this edge. I'm gonna rename this object to curry, by the way. I'll click on this edge, the entire edge, and Control F grid fill. So we can adjust our settings over here just to make them kind of have some nice geometry going on. I think this looks pretty good with this setting. And what we can do is to go ahead and enable wireframe over here for geometry, and turn off optimal display for the subdivision surface modifier, because we are going to need a lot of subdivision for this plane later. So let me just perhaps increase this to 4 for now. And then we can go ahead and remove the plate material from this, and then add a new material called curry. Let me just unhide the rice for now, and let me just bring this just so it's slightly above the bottom of the plate just like that, and enlarge it for a little bit so it kind of intersects with the plate for a little bit just like that. And now we can perhaps move vertices so they don't poke out of it just like that. So now we have a plane for our curry. So let me just turn off wireframe for the geometry, and let me just perhaps start adding some colors to our curry plane. So what I can do is to first also use the cell shading shader as a base. So converter, shader to RGB, converter, color ramp. And then I'm gonna set it to constant as well, and just kind of adjust the color ramp for a little bit. I think if I go even further, maybe the background's a little bit too bright, so if I go further it just goes all white just like that. But for now it's okay. And I can adjust the color ramp for the curry, and let me just turn this into like a curry color, so maybe a brownish color just like that, something like this. And then I can just copy this color, put my mouse over here, Control C, and then select this color, Control V over here, just make it slightly darker just like that. So now we have the base colors of the curry. And what I can do over here is to add a little bit of those little oil bubbles on our curry. So let me go ahead and Shift A, go ahead and texture, Voronoi texture. And if you look at the Voronoi texture, they kind of look like little bubbles, which are exactly what we need. So, and after that, we can add a Shift A converter, color ramp after the Voronoi texture. And then we can start modifying the colors and make this maybe a slightly light orange or yellow, just like that. And then what I can do is to change this color ramp to B-spline. So let me just bring the candles together just like this. And if I keep it as linear, as I bring them together, they start turning into like little circles. And I don't want that. I want that little pattern, if you understand what I mean here. If I set it to B-spline, you can see these little patterns. They don't exactly look like balls, but I mean bubbles, but they look like those little oil like bubbles on top of the curry, right? On top of like sauce and all that. So let me just increase the scale. Let me just increase the scale for a little bit. So we have some nice bubbles over here, but like we don't want this bubble to be like everywhere because they don't appear like everywhere on the curry, right? So what I can do is to go ahead and add a Shift A texture, noise texture. So I can use this noise texture to mask some of these bubbles out. So I can Control Shift right click on the noise texture, drag it onto the color ramp. And now we have a mix node, and I can change this to multiply. So what I'm essentially doing, let me just add a color ramp over here. So what I'm essentially doing is to use this black and white mask generated by the noise texture over here. And I'm gonna use it to mask out some parts. So only for the white part is gonna be showing the bubble patterns. And for the black parts, you can't see them. So if I take a look at the multiply node, it looks like this. So they're only showing in the white parts. That's pretty cool. So if you want to, you can adjust the roughness and all of that over here. But I just need a little bit of pattern just like that. And it's pretty cool, I think. And what I can do right now is to Control Shift right click the multiply node and drag it onto our original base color. And then I can change the mix to add. And then right here, we can see that we can have a little bit of pattern here and there. And that's pretty nice. Maybe I can bring this together even more. I can increase the contrast for the color ramp by bringing in the black and white together for the noise texture, just like that. So they show up a little bit more clearly. just like that. So now what I want to do is to just move up the curry plane for a little bit, just to make sure there's a little bit of depth down there, so later we can add our carrots and potatoes over here and they won't poke through the plate. So right now what I can do is to select the rice base and the rice particle, both of them, and let me just go to top view. You can select 7 on the numpad, I think, but I don't have the numpad with my current keyboard, so I gotta use other keys. So let me just go ahead and go to top view of the rice particles and the base, and let me select everything by hitting A and then U, unwrap, project from view, bounce. So if I go to UV editing, you can see we have unwrapped our rice base and rice particles, and this is the UV. So the reason I want to use the UV is because I want to create that effect where like the edges are gonna be, you know, curry color because they're in contact with the curry. So what I can do is to use the UV that I just made and go ahead and Shift A, input texture coordinate, and then let me go ahead and Control Shift left click until the UV is connected, and then Shift A, texture, gradient texture, and then I'm gonna select quadratic sphere over here, and then I can go ahead and add a vector mapping node, and I can just center the gradient for a little bit because let me just add a plane real quick. And if I give it the rice material, you can see that the gradient is shifted to the corner, and we want to shift it back. What I can do is to just set the location of X and Y to -0.5. So now the gradient is a little bit towards the center, which is pretty nice. And then if I go ahead and add a color ramp after this gradient texture, and I can bring the black and white together, you can see that we can extract some of these edges over here, right? And next we can just change the black color to something that is similar to the curry color over here. I'm just gonna eyeball it really quick, just like this. And what I can do is to go ahead and multiply this color on top of our color ramp. So what I can do is Control Shift right click, drag it onto the top color ramp, and just set this to multiply. And just turn up the vector, and this is how it looks like right now. It's pretty nice. But let's say you want to adjust how it looks like on the rice. Let's say you think it's too much or too high on some places. We can just go into the UV editing over here for the rice particle and also rice base. Let me just go ahead and select the rice base and rice particle. Go to edit mode, and then let me just turn off the overlays for now so we can see the effect clearly. So what we can do is to just adjust the UV itself. So if I move edges around the UV, you can see it's affecting the result because the gradient texture is based on our UVs right now. So if I modify the UV, it's gonna affect how it looks like. So I can bring some places higher, just like this. Maybe where it's closer to this side, I can bring it higher. And on the other side, I can just bring it like away, just like that. And now let me just add some carrot cubes into our curry. So I can just use a cube and just like soak it into the curry, just like that. And I can add a little bit of bevel, so maybe generate bevel modifier and Shift A, shade smooth. And I can just give it a new material, and let me just hit new and then call it carrot. And then I can go to the shading workspace and just do all the stuff with the cell shading again. So shader to RGB, converter, color ramp, set it to constant, and turn up the roughness, of course. And then just choose a color that represents carrot. So pretty nice. I can start scattering some of these around the curry. And what I can do is to add some a layer of gloss on top of our carrot because it's covered in some curry. So Shift A, just let me add a glossy BSDF and then add a converter shader to RGB. And let me just use a color ramp to kind of extract like the glossy layer, the highlights, glossy highlights of the carrot. And what I can do is to just Control Shift right click on this glossy color ramp, drag it onto the color, base color, and I can set the mix to add over here. And I can just set the white color of the glossy layer to something like yellow, orange. So it's a little bit glossy. And of course we can adjust the roughness of the glossy BSDF. So right now just to have a little bit of a layer of gloss on our carrot. And then what I can start doing is to just add some potatoes into our scene. So maybe just add a icosphere over here and scale it down and soak it into our curry just like this. And now we can start like sculpting it in sculpt mode. I'm just gonna use the grab brush over here to make it kind of look like diced potato. And it doesn't have to be perfect, totally based on your preferences. And then let me go ahead and assign the material for the carrot onto this, and let me just duplicate this material, and it's going to be the potato material. So I can adjust the color of the base color over here and just switch it to slightly yellowish so it kind of looks like potato, right? And I'm going to adjust the colors of the carrots as well, just so it's like carrots being covered in curry, if that makes sense. And then I can just scatter some of these potato around the curry as well. I think their colors will be a little bit more darker because they kind of absorb a lot of curry. So let me just perhaps adjust the colors for a little bit. Just to make sure nothing is poking out of the bottom of the plate again. So let's say I'm making like beef curry over here. So what I can do is to grab some of these potato chunks and just add a different material to it. So it's a beef material right now. So what I can do is to just give them like a beef color, just like that. And I can adjust the shapes of the beef for a little bit as well, so they are not all the same. Maybe a little bit more chunkier. And I want these beef chunks to have a little bit of texture. So what I can do is to go ahead and modify the base color a little bit. So I can Shift A, texture, noise texture. And this is how it looks like on the beef. I can Control T and add some mapping nodes. And I can adjust the scale on the X and Y. And I can use object coordinates as well. So let me just start making some stripe patterns for our beef, just like this. And we can add a color ramp after the noise texture to just make some of these patterns, just like that. I can play around with the scales even more. And the color ramp over here, just to get a little bit of like a stripe, just a little bit of texture pattern on our beef, just like this. Not too much. We just need a little bit of texture over here. And then I can go ahead and Control Shift right click on the texture and drag it onto our base color over here. So it looks like this right now. The noise texture is being multiplied onto our base color, but right before the add. And I can set this to multiply. And let me just Control Shift and click on this add node and see how it looks like. So right now I want to flip the black and white. So the texture is going to be the black stripes over here. And I can change the black color to something like a red. Just decrease the strength of the texture for a little bit. I can even like decrease the brightness of the colors of the beef over here because I think they're actually darker. Just like that. And then I can move around the color ramps and the strength of the multiply. And what I can do is to actually use this noise texture as the bump of our glossy BSDF and our principal BSDF over here. So the stripes are going to affect the shading. So what I'm gonna do over here is to add a Shift A vector bump. And I'm gonna bring this noise texture further to the back so I can connect to both of the principled and the glossy BSDF. So let me bring the factor into the height and the normal into all the normal sockets, just like this. And now we can see the noise texture is kind of affecting our shading for a little bit, and it's pretty nice. And I can also add some green beans into our curry. So let me add a icosphere, maybe with 2 subdivisions, scale it down, and just soak it into our curry as well. Give it the carrot material, duplicate it, and call it green beans. And then I'm gonna give it the color of the green beans, just like that. Just to adjust the colors for a little bit. So maybe it's green originally, but since it's kind of soaked in curry, it's a little bit more yellowish, just like that. Maybe not so much, just like that. And I can just scatter some of these around again. Maybe I can add a few more potatoes. Just duplicate and rotate, just like that. So now it looks pretty nice. We have all the ingredients and the curry. It's pretty much looking like it's done. I just realized there's some distortion on the curry over here. So what I'm gonna do is to select the curry plane and Control T on the Voronoi texture for the bubble patterns. And I'm just gonna use object instead of generated. And then we can see that it looks a little bit better, and that's pretty nice. So now to take this curry right to the next level, although it looks pretty much done already, we can select all of our ingredients over here and also the plate. And let me just move all of them into a new collection and call them intersect. Because what I'm gonna do now is to apply the miso soup technique that I used from the last video, and I'm gonna use it on the curry. So what I'm gonna do is to go ahead and select on our curry plane. This is why I need so much geometry on the curry plane. It's because I'm gonna use that technique on this plane as well. So let me go ahead and select the curry plane and go into geometry nodes. And I'm gonna add a new set of geometry nodes, and I'm gonna call this intersect. And what I'm gonna do is to bring the intersect collection right into the geometry nodes by just like dragging it into the workspace, just like this. And we also need a node called geometry proximity. Oh, it's right there already. And also a realize instances node, just like this, just like our last tutorial. And also a map range, I think, just like that. And then I'm gonna plug the collection info into the realize instances, and then the realize instances into the geometry proximity node, and then the distance into the value of the map range node, and the result of the map range to the group output, just like this. And then we can plug the toolmin to the group input, just like this, so we can control it over here in the modifier stack. And then let me just select relative for the collection info over here. And let me go ahead on the side over here, hit this arrow, and go down to the group sockets. I'm gonna select the result and change the type to color. And then what I'm going to do is to go to the modifier stack to find the geometry nodes. For the output attributes, I'm going to say color. Just like this, color. Then I'm going to go down to the data tab. I'm going to add a color attributes. And this is going to be called color by default. So I'm just going to hit OK just like this. So now our setup is done, and let me just go back to the shading tab. And what I can do now is in the query material, Shift A, input attribute. So what if I just type in the color attribute over here? What will we see? We have the geometry proximity, which is pretty nice. And what we can do is to increase the subdivision for a little bit because they look a little bit jagged. We can bump up the subdivision for a little bit, just as much as your computer can handle, I guess, until it looks pretty smooth, just like this. And what I can do is to put a color ramp after the attribute, and I can just bring in the white, just like that. And actually, let me just flip the black and white, so we have something just like this. And now I can mix this geometry proximity on top of our original colors. So let me just Control Shift right click on our proximity color ramp and just drag it onto the add. And then I can change this to add as well. And then I can just change the color of the color ramp over here of the proximity to something like a yellowish color. But of course I can decrease the factor for a little bit so it doesn't look too much. Just a little bit is enough. It looks pretty nice already, just like that. So now it looks pretty nice already, but I can also add a little bit of displacement on the curvy plane so it's not just all flat. So it's like there's something in there. So let me go ahead and add a modifier that is going to be deform in this place. And then I'm going to put it like after the subdivision, just like that. And then it goes, and then it just went up there. So what I can do is to hit new on the texture. And then for the texture, I'm going to hit clouds, right? It's going to go crazy, but I can just decrease the strength by a lot. It's just need to be I just need a little bit of strength over here, just so it's not like completely flat, just like that. And you can't really see a big difference, but what I can do now is to add a little bit of a layer of gloss on the curry as well. So I can Shift A in the material, add a glossy BSDF. So I want some like a layer of gloss. So let me just turn down the roughness just to see it better. It's shaded smooth, of course. And then we can see some like gloss over here, right? And it's pretty nice. I just need something like this. And what I can do is to, of course, do the same thing. After the glossy BSDF, I'm going to add a converter, shader to RGB, and a color ramp. I'm just gonna like apply this reflection on top of everything. So after our last add node over here, I'm gonna Control Shift right click on this glossy color ramp and drag it onto the add and change the mix to add as well. And yeah, it looks pretty nice already on different angles, but of course I can change the white color to be a little bit more yellowish, just like that. Perhaps modify the roughness for a little bit. And of course we can adjust the factor of the add to control how much reflection we want on our curry. So maybe I just want a little bit, just enough so it doesn't like break our entire stylized look. Now I think our curry rice looks pretty finished, but what I can do is I want to adjust the rice particles UVs for a little bit more. So let me just go into the UV editing and just take a look at our texture, and I can just move these around so you can add a little bit of variation on the rice. Of course, I can also adjust the UVs of the rice base. So let me select the rice base, and perhaps I can even apply the subdivision over here so we have more points on the UVs to work with. And then I can just kind of match the rice particles for a little bit more. So if you want some outlines on our curry rice, we can also add some freestyle outlines over here. So let me check freestyle in the render settings over here. Let me go to the view layer settings and go down to the freestyle settings. If we render the scene right now with freestyle, it's gonna look like this. It's not gonna be what we want. So what I think works best is if I go down to the view layer settings to the freestyle line set, that for the edge type, I only select contour and external contour. I think it looks the best like this. Of course, I have to modify the thickness for a little bit. So what I can do is to go to the freestyle thickness and add a modifier called a long stroke. Basically, I am going to change the mapping to curve, and I can use this curve to give this a hand-drawn effect. So just like how I did for the past videos, I can just adjust the curve just like this. So basically for this curve, the higher the point is going to be thicker, the lower the point is going to be thinner, and this entire graph is representing an entire stroke. So for an entire stroke, there will be a thinner point, a thicker point, and just like that, we can use that to adjust the thickness of our freestyle. So let's render once and see how it looks like. So I think this looks pretty nice. Maybe we can increase the max for a little bit over here on the long stroke modifier. So now this is the final result of our curry rice. I hope you guys found this video useful or helpful. If you've learned something, tell me in the comments, and just tell me what kind of food do you want to make for my next video. Thank you so much for your support still. I know I've not been posting a lot lately, but I'll try my best to post more videos in the future. So thank you so much for your patience and your support. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and a little bit late, but Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I hope all of your wishes come true, and just remember this one thing, that life is always working out for you in some ways, even when you can't really see it. Sometimes you might feel a lot of ups and downs in life, and it's okay. Sometimes you feel down, sometimes you feel like you can't do anything, you don't know what to do. And just remember, sometimes the best you can do is to just put one foot in front of the other and just slowly, steadily move forward. And you don't have to force yourself to do anything. Take your time. If you're not feeling like hustling and chasing goals, sometimes you deserve some rest without guilt. So allow yourself to be where you are right now, and know that sometimes just living through the day is a way of moving forward. Sometimes all you have to do is to welcome a tomorrow, and eventually you will find things that excite you. You'll find people who know about you, and you'll realize life is just really bigger than you think. Just like when you look up to the stars, you just know how small you are, right? And be playful with life. Sometimes it's just a good idea to just walk around the neighborhood and get a coffee for yourself. Get yourself some nice food, take care of yourself, and make sure you are your own greatest ally. That's all I want to say to you guys before we step into 2026 together. So let's have the greatest year together. Let's achieve new things and explore new things together. Let us all turn our wildest imaginations into reality through art. Thank you so much for watching again, and take care, guys. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.